Hello there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 challenge run. In my last run, I attempted to beat Cyberpunk 2077 as a sniper, which was surprisingly difficult, and today I want to take on something thematic and a bit different as I try to become the ultimate raider in Fallout 4's survival difficulty. Before we get into this run, I want to introduce you to this protagonist? Antagonist? Either way, the story of Sally Two Shanks Sawyer. You see, she was at some point a settler, but after a horrible raid on her settlement, she ended up joining a raider gang. She's always been a go-getter type, so she wants to do things better than any other raider in the Commonwealth, and fundamentally wants to change how raiding works in the Commonwealth. Now, you may be thinking she's going to make raiding nicer. No, she isn't. She's here about efficiency. She wants to make sure that she controls all of the Commonwealth, and she wants to cut out all of these small factions and groups of raiders and unite them instead of having them fight against each other. So to that end, we can talk about the goals of this run. Sally here, even though she did get into raiding by being raided, is not a good character. Her goal is efficiency. She is here to take all of these infighting groups of raiders and turn them into a combined front under her control. She wants a monopoly on random wanton violence in the Commonwealth. The way she's going to do this is naturally through taking down raider bosses throughout the Commonwealth, and each time she defeats a certain number of raider bosses, she will upgrade to the next tier of raider supremacy, unlocking new weapons and armor for her to use against more raider bosses. In total, she needs to take down 15 raider bosses in order to get enough of a power vacuum in the Commonwealth for her to take over, but of course, she's going to need a little bit of muscle behind her when she goes to do that, so after taking out the 15 raider bosses, she's going to recruit the gangs of the Nuka-World raiders into her fold to take over the rest of the Commonwealth. With that, we can cover the rules of the run, which are pretty simple. I can only use weapons and armor I've unlocked through defeating raider bosses. I must play the entire game on the survival difficulty. I can't use any bugs or glitches on purpose to exploit the game, and I cannot use console commands for anything but fixing bugs. With the rules of the run laid out, there's nothing left to do but to jump right into the gameplay, where I craft Sally and use the Start Me Up Redux mod to start the game as a raider in a random place in the Commonwealth. The run kicks off with immediate action as I manage to lure this Deathclaw into its death at the hands of my raider allies before looting the entire town for all it's worth. With that, it's paramount that Sally here starts taking down raider bosses, as she's going to need much better gear in order to conquer the Commonwealth. Speaking of good gear and conquering, you can now conquer the gym while listening to your favorite music and podcasts using the classic Raycon earbuds, now featuring active noise cancellation to help you focus on having a great workout. I've started going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, and I use my Raycons every time I go and find them to be very comfortable to wear, even when working up a sweat, thanks to the optimized gel tips that Raycon has to keep them from falling out and stay comfortable the entire time. It's also super convenient to just leave the carrying case in my car and let it charge while I work out, meaning I'll never have to worry about running out of battery, considering the 8-hour playtime and 32-hour battery life. For me, it's basically a cheat code to make sure I never run out of battery. So if you want to get your hands on some affordable earbuds, make sure to go to buyraycon.com/willow to get 20% off the fan favorite everyday earbuds classic. Thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and with that, it's time to get back to the run. Oh, also, I forgot to mention that we of course do start at the base tier of Raider, which I thought would be obvious, but I figured I should mention it in case somebody isn't following. On screen, you'll see what's available for me to use right now. So with that, I start making my way up north while avoiding fighting, except for this group of mongrels. They really weren't that much of an issue thanks to the pipe pistol I managed to grab at the start, and after that, I reached this overpass near the Corvega assembly plant. This is the main base of a group of raiders led by a man named Jared. This being the first raider boss I'm taking on, I decide to take on a strategy of being an absolute coward as I sit back and take pot shots at the various raiders spread across the outside of the factory. I take this fight incredibly slowly, and even then I end up dying a couple of times, but through liberal use of cover and scavenging ammo off of the raiders, I managed to silence the outside of the factory, but unfortunately that was the easy part, as now I need to clear the inside of the factory, which means no more attacking from range. Luckily though, I managed to pick up a double barrel shotgun, and that should be my best friend in these narrow corridors. I start off by killing off this raider in a bathroom before slowly and meticulously clearing out each room one by one, and each Each time I'm detected by enemies, I just run back to the bathroom until they forget I exist, letting me abuse these sneak criticals over and over. While it may seem like I have this all under control, I in fact do not, as I end up dying a few times inside the factory, especially to this Protectron that I activate to kill Jared. Unfortunately, the Protectron is kind of the best way to deal with Jared, because he is a very difficult boss at level 1, and once the Protectron is activated, I cannot allow myself to be detected by any turrets, otherwise it becomes immediately hostile because of the jank coding of Fallout 4. So no matter what, I have to deal with this Protectron, and it is a tough customer at level 1. But through remaining patient and running away while I'm detected, I managed to kill off the Protectron and all of the remaining raiders inside the factory. I know I don't need to kill all of the raiders here to complete my goal, but early on I just feel it's so much better to do so, as I can get so much gear and loot off of them to use to upgrade my gear, which is really convenient considering Sally has just taken down her first raider boss, giving her access to the Raider Scum tier of weaponry and armor, which is huge as it allows me to use a hunting rifle that I acquired earlier alongside all of the frag grenades I found on enemies throughout this dungeon. With that, I go ahead and make my way further north, where I end up dying a couple of times as I try and deal with Wolfgang and Trudy, but on my 4th attempt I decide to help Wolfgang kill off the shopkeeper and her son before encountering Trashcan Carla. I try and be a proper raider and mug her, but she just isn't intimidated. But just as I fail, some raiders attack us, and I take the opportunity to kill off Trudy before mopping up the remaining raiders with ease. After that, I debate if I want to take on another raider boss or do some side questing, and decide it's probably best for me to get one more raider boss under my belt before taking on anything else, so I make my way over to Backstreet Apparel to take on the second boss, a woman named Clutch. Overall, it's a really small dungeon and there's only a couple of raiders outside that I managed to take down in both melee and ranged combat alongside a couple of turrets before entering the clothing store itself. The first two raiders inside almost immediately detect me, but I managed to stay hidden long enough to take down one of them before introducing the other to some lovely high-speed lead, only to die right after when I throw a Molotov that blows up a bit too close to me. Honestly, I felt like I was just getting lucky over and over and over with those combat encounters just now, so I think I might come back to this dungeon a little bit later, and first start working on getting some side quests done and leveling up by making my way over to Thicket Excavations, where I find a man named Sully Mathis, who I am sure is on the up and up. Anyways, he offers me some caps to go do some swimming in this flooded quarry in order to get his water pump running, so I do just that before dying to and then killing a couple of Mirelurks that spawn once I'm done. With the job complete, I collect my payment while leaving this man to his devices, and it's now when Miss Twoshanks here decides that no proper raider boss is without a fortress, and she wants to build one herself, but where? She was having a think about where she wanted to base her operations, and then it struck her as she was attacked by a fearsome creature of the wasteland, a Budbloog, otherwise known as a blood bug, but you know, around here we call them Budbloogs, and of course, this inspired her not only to come up with the name of her raider band, but also their home location, which will be Taffington Boathouse, a former settlement that she heard of that is now infested by the fearsome Budbloogs. She intends to clear out the Budbloogs and set this up as the base of operations for her new gang, the Budbloog Babes. Oh, this is so silly. I'm trying a more storytelling aspect, and I know that there's gonna be people who hate this thing where I bounce back and forth between saying I and me, and Sally Twoshanks and she and her, but I'm having too much fun with this, and subjecting you all to listen to the words Budbloog over and over is hilarious to me, so you're beautiful, and yeah, I guess give me some feedback in the comments, but you know, I'm trying a bunch of new things with this video, and I hope you're enjoying. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already and you want more content like this in the future. Anyways, while I was rambling on there, you saw me clearing out the Taffington Boathouse and dying a couple of times, but now Sally is going to need to start building out a veritable fortress. She's also going to have to do some recruiting, as it's not really much of a gang with one person, so she spends some time building up and then sets off towards Boston once more. The next task on the list is of course to kill another raider boss, and I haven't forgotten about Backstreet Apparel, so I go ahead and make my way there to take down Clutch once more, more, and this time it goes, well, not bad. I didn't end up dying, but that was more to do with luck than skilled play, if I'm completely honest. There were multiple times where I very much so thought I was going to and probably should have died, but the enemies just gave me that little bit of wiggle room I needed to take them down. But in the end, being lucky is a skill in and of itself, so after clearing out all of the raiders, Sally has now progressed to the Raider Psycho tier, which unlocks a ton of weaponry for her, including machetes and combat knives, which are going to be a big boon, as I'm planning to do a more melee-focused build throughout this run. Moving on, I make my way into Diamond City, and I'm pretty thirsty, so I go ahead and enter the Colonial Tap House pub for a drink, only to get absolute peak cinema entertainment as I watch the bartender absolutely beat the crap out of this patron's husband. This makes me forget how thirsty I was, so I head outside and agree to help the man who just got beat down as he attempts to confront the bartender once more about the bartender screwing his wife. Unfortunately, this guy's a little bit unhinged and goes pulling out a gun on the bartender, which only ends poorly for me as the bartender blows me away in an instant. I also forgot to save upon reaching Diamond City, so I now have to take down the Backstreet Apparel gang once again, which ended up taking a couple of tries as I die multiple times to various silly mistakes and just the simple fact I didn't get lucky again. It was kind of frustrating losing all of that progress, so I played a lot less patient and it ended up making things more difficult for me than it should have been, but eventually I reached the Colonial Tap House again, and this time I decide not to play around. I just let the bartender kill Paul here, the patron's husband, and then I try and kill the bartender myself, only for him to be the fastest draw in the West. Seriously, man, he pulled this shotgun out in a millisecond and blew me away once again. Luckily this time I saved beforehand and I once again participate in this altercation of the two, but this time I yet again let the bartender kill Paul, and then I kill the bartender myself after he reveals a nearby drug deal taking place. I then make my way to the chem deal all by myself and use frag grenades to take down everyone involved before accidentally performing a punch warp, which is wild as I have never done this on purpose or accident in nearly 1,000 hours of gameplay, so I'm kind of impressed with myself. Anyways, I leave no witnesses and take all of the chems before returning to Diamond City, where I do a bunch of trading and craft better versions of all of the chems, including a healthy amount of Buff Jet and Psycho Buff. These will be very useful for my melee build, and also going forward until the last tier. Every raider tier is now going to cost me 3 raider bosses, while the last tier will cost me 4 to keep things interesting and also to reach that 15 raider bosses I need to take out. But before tackling some more of those raider bosses, Sally needs a second in command, so she decides to head over to this raider only bar called the Combat Zone, because she figures where else would you find a competent raider to take over as your second in command. So I reach the Combat Zone, and when I approach, the raiders start fighting with some nearby super mutants with, well, predictable results, but in the end I have to clean up the remaining raiders who are smart enough to avoid the mutants, and then enter the Combat Zone itself, and for whatever reason, all of the raiders in here are oddly underleveled compared to what I've been fighting so far, so the fight is brutally one-sided as I use my machete in combination with VATS to turn them all into blood donation speedrunners. I then spend a while looting as I ignore the man yelling at me as he cowers in this makeshift arena, before finally approaching him, where he tries to talk me into taking the contract of his prize fighter, a woman named Cait, who definitely has the violent side of being a raider down pat, so I go ahead and tell the man that I'll take over her contract, and with that, I need to get her geared up, and as for companions in this run, they will be limited to the same weapons and armor as me to keep things simple. With a freshly recruited second in command, I go ahead and start making my way towards another raider boss named Akak at a satellite array somewhat near the Taffington Boathouse. Along the way there, I run into a interesting situation, and here we see the wild mongrel in its natural habitat, floating and defying physics as it T-poses aggressively while dead. This is what we call not good. He's really stuck there, huh? Isn't he? Alright. And after that, I reach this small camp and take a nap there to save, but the bed, disappears. Either way, it got me a save, which was very convenient because I die immediately afterwards because I'm blind and didn't see this very obvious landmine that I should have seen. Anyways, after that, I go and take on these raiders and some mole rats at the satellite array, where I end up dying a couple of times, but manage to quickly fix my mistakes of ignoring the wrong enemies and start slowly making my way through the raiders both outside and inside the base. The most difficult section of this dungeon was the final room, where I have to take down a bunch of raiders, including the boss, in a very packed environment. Luckily though, I have the perfect answer to this, which was a liberal use of Buffjet and Psycho, and with that I take down Akak, and I only need to take down 2 more raider bosses to get to the next tier, so I quickly make my way over to the nearby outpost Zamonja, where I encounter their leader, a man named Boomer, who has a fat man, which is incredibly dangerous, but thankfully he only has 1 shot with it before resorting to melee attacks. I end up dying a few times here, once to the fat man, but mostly due to his lackeys, as they are starting to get better gear like hunting rifles, which can take me down in a couple of hits. After some trial and error, I get up on this overpass near the outpost, and between me and Cait, we are able to whittle down the raiders until the outpost falls silent. With that, there's 2 raider bosses down and 1 to go before another tier unlocks, but I want to go make some upgrades to my gear first, as to make it a little bit more difficult for the enemies to kill me. So I head back to Taffington Boathouse, and along the way anger a rad scorpion who follows me all the way back. I quickly build a turret, and between me, Cait, and the turret, we're able to deal with the scorpion rather easily before grabbing a bunch of crafting materials and making my way to Diamond City, where I upgrade all of my armor with the pocketed modification to give me some more carry weight, and then I make my way over to this boat where I die trying to be a raider, which isn't very encouraging. Well, on my second attempt, I make sure to use some chems because that seems more raidery, and that allows me to kill the wastelanders on the boat and then save. I then swim my way over to the East Boston Preparatory School to take down their leader, a man named Judge Zeller, and this fight is an absolute slog. I die many times as I try and clear out the place, and the difficulty has suddenly spiked quite quickly. Most of the enemies here take multiple sneak critical headshots from my hunting rifle to down. Meanwhile, they kill me with very little to almost no effort. So, you know, I spend a few hours here trying to get the stars to align, and eventually I do manage to do just that and get through all of the raiders in this school, only to realize that Judge Zeller isn't here and doesn't spawn until I do a quest for Bunker Hill, which would require me just helping Bunker Hill out of the goodness of my heart, which doesn't strike me as a very rare thing to do, so this was a waste of time, but hey, I did it. Anyways, I move on and try and find another raider boss, and this time I land on Cinder, who runs a gang at the Revere Station on the East Coast. So I head over there, and it immediately turns into a chaotic mess as I start fighting with the raiders, and then realize I can lure them into fighting some nearby gunners, and that works out wonderfully until a Mirelurk Queen just comes trundling out of the water, and it's just an all-out 4-way brawl, including me. But it's here where I decide that discretion is the better part of valor, as I let everybody else fight it out until just the Mirelurk Queen remains, before slipping inside the metro station, where, rather surprisingly, I managed to clear out all of the raiders except for Cinder herself, only to die when I try and take her on in melee combat. She unfortunately has a combat rifle that will reliably kill me in a single shot, so I die a few times to her before taking her down by using the clever tactic of throwing an excessive amount of frag grenades at her. Oh, also, you may have noticed that some of the footage is different. I somehow managed to lose some of my recordings, so I ended up salvaging some clips from my live stream in order to make this work. Also, in case you're curious about my streams or anything like that, there is a link tree in the description with a link to all of my streaming platforms, socials, and a StreamVOD YouTube channel. Shameless plug out of the way, with Cinder dead, Sally has progressed progressed to the Raider Scaver tier, unlocking metal armor, baseball bats, and the super sledge. Honestly, this tier is more useful for Cait than it is for me, as I immediately equip her with a ton of metal armor, as I want to continue to use this Raider armor as it looks really cool, and if I'm gonna take over the Commonwealth, I may as well do it with that Mad Max fashion statement that I oh so love. With another tier obtained, I feel I should work on my gear a bit more, so I go around the Commonwealth settlements and liberate them from their crops in order to craft a ton of vegetable starch. I also end up dying as I try and kill a trader, which, you know, isn't very good for signs of me as a raider going forward, but I do manage to kill this random preacher, so I guess it evens out a little bit. I then take all of the vegetable starch and a bunch of junk to Diamond City, where I use it to upgrade both mine and Cait's armor, which should help a ton with taking on more raider bosses, as my set of raider armor is as upgraded as you can get it without finding sturdy or heavy pieces of raider armor. This is all not to mention that Cait now has an amazing set of armor, with the metal armor all being polished. Speaking of armor though, I feel there's something missing, and I really need to upgrade the wardrobe of Sally Twoshanks here, so I decide to head down towards the DB Technical High School while fighting through a ton of raiders on my way there. The combat has been very tense throughout this run, but there's just something different about fighting through these fire escapes and rooftops that really puts me on edge, as it feels like raiders can just kind of pop out of anywhere, and while my armor is now relatively good, I can't be messing around or getting surprised too often because it still doesn't take very long for me to die. Overall though, it's still very fun and exciting as I rampage my way all the way to the school, where I meticulously clear the outside of the education establishment before having Cait lockpick the back door, where I enter and nearly immediately die as a bunch of raiders rush me down and kill me in melee combat. On my second attempt of the dungeon, it turns into an amazing spectacle with a non-stop firefight where I'm walking a knife's edge between glorious victory and shameful defeat. It truly feels like there was a never-ending supply of raiders in this place, and I had so many close calls where I nearly die and have to make a bunch of split-second decisions in order to survive. Usually that decision being to pop more buff jet or psycho buff, because those chems are hard carrying me right now. Being able to kill enemies in 2 or sometimes even 1 hits with VATS is so broken, and jet just allows me to just avoid all of the damage that I need to, and overall this was, I think, one of the most fun dungeon encounters I've had in Fallout in a very long time. We're talking like the past 2 years. I don't think there's been a dungeon that's been as equally fun as it is challenging in the past 2 years of challenge runs, which is incredible. This really takes the cake. I cannot really put into words just how much fun I was having during this, and I think during my live stream I was relatively quiet because I was just blown away by how insane it was going. Surprisingly, Bosco, the raider leader here, was the least of my worries as I took him down in a single shot, but all of his gang were showing up from every doorway, and I had to think fast and be incredibly aggressive to avoid an untimely death at their hands. Also, in the end, I got the Bosco teddy bear mascot helmet, which, let's all be honest, you all would have burned me at the stake if I didn't get this piece of raider equipment during this run. Now then, that's the first of 3 raider bosses done for this tier, so there's nothing to do but carry on taking out all of the competition for Sally. So I head over to Thicket Excavations to check on that Sully Mathis guy, and you won't believe this, he was a raider the whole time, and I helped him set up this place for his gang, and you know, Sally isn't about charity work, and for whatever reason, his goons just start shooting at her immediately, so naturally, he's sealed his fate. And this fight was truly a slow and grinding crawl, as I use my hunting rifle to pick off tons of raiders from afar, just making my way around the edge of this quarry, and I also get involved in a couple of melee fights, but this is mostly just sniping at people from as far away as I can get reasonably, and slowly slowly but surely whittling down their numbers one by one until eventually I reach the bottom of the quarry, where I use a bunch of grenades to kill some Mirelurks before encountering Sully Mathis himself, and it turns out he is a hardy fellow. He has a ton of HP, so I end up getting his attention and then running as far away as possible and using my hunting rifle to fell this very sturdy man. Luckily, he has a shotgun on him, so he wasn't all that much of a threat once I got far away, but that's 2 raider bosses down and 1 to go, so I start making my way towards the next raider boss, a woman named Sparta, who is currently leading a raid on the Bad TFL regional offices. On my way there, I kill a fisherman, then get into a massive firefight with some super mutants and ghouls, which was very tense. I have to alternate between melee and ranged multiple times as I cut down the ghouls and super mutants when they get too close, before using my pipe weapons and hunting rifle to take down the mutants at range. I then enter the Bad TFL offices, and this dungeon was kind of underwhelming. I do have a bit of a close call with Sparta herself when she tries to rush me down, but besides that, it was a breeze to clear out all of the raiders inside the building, along with the building security, and other than the fact that Sally progresses to the Raider Waster tier, which unlocks the combat rifle, combat armor, ripper, and laser weapons, I don't have that much to talk about with relation to this dungeon. I yet again feel like this tier is more of an upgrade for Cait than Sally, as I plan on giving Cait a combat rifle I picked up a while ago, as well as upgrading her to combat armor if I can find enough of it and upgrade it in time before Nuka-World. As for Sally though, she's gonna be keeping with the Raider armor and a focus on melee unless something out of the ordinary happens and I get an awesome legendary of some form. Speaking of which, I've also managed to gather a few pieces of sturdy Raider armor and leveled up enough to get the blacksmith perk to rank 2, so I decide to take a detour to Diamond City where I upgrade my machete and add bleed damage to it, as well as transfer a ton of upgrades onto my Raider armor, which will help me with staying up in fights quite a bit, I hope. Anyways, there's more Raider bosses that need to be put down, so I start this group of 3 Raider bosses by heading over to Hardware Town, where a woman is pleading for help. Naturally, I give her the good old serrated slice up before entering the store, where I get engaged in a small firefight with a handful of raiders, including a boss named Demo. This fight should have been very easy, but I end up being a bit overconfident and it nearly ends in my death as the raider boss himself does a lot of damage, but in the end I have Cait do a bit of heavy lifting, and with Demo dead, I'm on to my next target, which just so happens to be the raider boss Slab, who is currently hunting down a serial killer known as Pikmin who only kills raiders. At first I thought about keeping him alive because it could help me in the short term, but in the long term I really don't want to deal with Pikmin as my gang flourishes here in the Commonwealth, and since it's a good chance to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I decide I'm going to take down both of them. I start making my way over to East Boston only to end up struggling significantly with both entering and fighting through this dungeon. I die nearly a dozen times, as between legendary raiders that kill me in a single hit and the close quarters combat being absolutely brutal, I find progress to be incredibly slow. As each death I get a tiny bit further, but I do manage to have Cait unlock this hidden safe, giving me a legendary combat knife known as Pikmin's Blade. After that though, I struggle for a really long time as I try and make my way through this house of horrors, but eventually, by playing things patiently, I manage to reach this room where Slab is confronting the serial killer Pikmin, and I wait for the fight to start and then slaughter Slab and his raiders before talking to Pikmin, and as I said, I'm still tempted to let him go and continue his work, but instead, I just end up pulling out his own knife and killing him with it quickly, which is a rather fitting end, I feel. With Slab defeated, I move on to my next target, the raider boss Red Tourette, over at the Federal Ration Reserve. On my way there, I find this vendor selling cat meat? And for once, I get to raid a trader successfully without dying. Oh man, I butchered that. Screw it, we do it live. Oh man, you all are beautiful, by the way. Anyways, I kill this traitor, and then I have to start fighting my way through the raiders by using a healthy amount of Molotovs and my hunting rifle to whittle down their forces outside, which includes a raider in power armor. I get a bit worried when he rushes me down, but luckily I have Cait here to tank him as I use Pikmin's blade to stack bleeds on him with VATS. After he's down, I continue to take down the raiders without mercy, and it's getting incredibly fun to use Pikmin's blade in VATS. About halfway through the dungeon, I kill a legendary raider who drops an explosive automatic pipe rifle, which immediately changed my plans for this run. Originally, I was going to focus on only using melee, but I am rarely lucky enough to get such a good legendary for the runs I do, and I'm not missing the opportunity to use an explosive weapon. So with that, Sally's plan has dramatically changed. I'm going to start taking points into the commando perk in order to make this explosive pipe rifle all that more deadly, but I'm also going to keep that melee flair that I've had going on by continuing to use melee, which will help a lot with using automatic weapons because it'll conserve a ton of ammo, which should allow me to use some automatic rifles in order to deal with really difficult enemies, and everything else can be left to melee. Speaking of, I put this new tactic to use immediately as I use my explosive pipe pistol to go ahead and mow down Red Tourette with extreme prejudice. That's the third raider boss, meaning Sally progresses to the raider survivalist tier, which unlocks the assault rifle for use. I thought about going and hunting down one and using it, but honestly, I'm having too much fun with my current gear to bother, so this is mostly a cosmetic tier for me, and with that, there's only one more tier to go before we take on Nuka-World, and you know what? I want to make it difficult, so we're gonna up the price to 4 raider bosses. But before I take on another raider stronghold, I decide I should make a pit stop at Sanctuary where I use the Your Special book to get another point in agility, which allows me to take the first rank of Blitz, a perk that increases the range of melee attacks and VATS. I then make my way south to take on the first raider boss of this set of 4 at the Beantown Brewery, where I can find Tinker Tom. Along the way there, I kill a couple of Bud Bloogs, and once I reach the brewery, I have Cait lockpick the back door and we enter. The fight here isn't all that difficult, as I only really have to deal with a handful of raiders because the back entrance places me right next to Tower Tom's room, but despite this, I do manage to die somehow, as Tower Tom has some really powerful gun on him. My next attempt goes, well, much better, mostly on account that Tower Tom somehow managed to get stuck in the elevator. Oh my lord. Only in a Bethesda game would the boss of a dungeon get stuck in an elevator. Oh, it was so funny to me. Either way, I open that elevator door and then stab him many times in order to make sure he no longer is a threat to me. And yeah, that was a funny way to deal with a raider boss, but we need to move on to the next raider boss I was planning to take out. So I make my way to Monsignor Plaza because I know it's a raider stronghold and I'm trying to take down another raider boss, but I'll save you some time. It was a fun bit of combat, but this is another Judge Zeller situation where I kill off everyone in the dungeon only to find out there's no boss here, and this one isn't even linked to a quest. The boss apparently dies before you start the game, and there's just like terminals referencing that this boss is dead, but their gang is all still here and they haven't gotten a new boss. So it's a little bit weird, but I'm not counting it for this run because I didn't murder them. So I make my way to the next place I know is a raider stronghold because I'm kind of just going off vibes at this point, and that is Andrew Station, and it's here where I take on the raider boss Chancer, and this is one of the harder dungeons as it is in South Boston, so I expect to struggle quite a bit. I end up dying on my first attempt as the combat here is basically what I expected it to be, but I find it quite fun. There's plenty of difficult moments as I go through this massive complex filled with raiders, some of which being legendary or simply being higher levels such as veterans, that make things a little bit more tricky as they take a lot of punishment to take down. But like any good raider, I start applying a liberal use of brute force and sheer violence, and through that I'm able to rearrange the facial features of all these raiders like I'm playing with a Mr. Potato Head. Once I've managed to kill off all of the normal raiders, I find Chancer, and it turns out she is incredibly durable. Like, hot damn, she must have ate her vegetables because I unload a ton of ammo into her, and it only brings her down to half health before I mag dump this wall, hurting me more than her, which was was funny, but not fortunate in any way. Anyways, I decide that cheat codes are better than anything else, so I just start using a bunch of chems and run her down with Pikmin's blade, killing her very quickly before having to panic and find a way to kill everything else in the room. And with that done, I have killed another raider boss. That's 2 down, 2 to go, and then we're into Nuka-World. Are you excited? I'm excited. Anyways, with Chancer in the dirt, I finish off looting the area and head out to the next boss, a man named Slag, who runs the fire-obsessed lunatics known as the Forged. I make my way over to his home base of Saugus Ironworks and start a fight with the flurry of furious flame-focused fanatics in a fantastical firefight of frightening fervor, until I think I have cleared the outside, but it turns out I was wrong, and holy crap, even with good armor, the flamer does this much damage this quickly to me? Last time I dealt with this, I had like no armor. I was really like not decked out at all, but I actually have good armor now, and it still kills me instantly. Why does the flamer do nothing to enemies when I use it? I do not understand. I will not ever understand. Anyways, I die, and on my second attempt, things go perfectly. I end up clearing the entirety of the outside of the dungeon, but this was entirely down to luck. Not to say that I didn't play things correctly, but there were many moments where I simply get lucky that an enemy missed or I managed to run away. Also, the boss fight inside the dungeon was lengthy, as I had to enter the boss fight room and then run out immediately after shooting somebody because, you know, there's a bunch of them in there and they all have flamers or laser pistols or some kind of horrible melee weapon that will kill me very dead. Anyways, I turn this into a battle of attrition and slowly pick off everybody but the leader, who runs back into the boss fight room. So I run back into the boss fight room, aggro him once again, run out again, and then he gets focused on Cait long enough for me to use some chems to absolutely stab him many times with Pikmin's blade, as well as use VATS once the jet runs off. With Slag taken down, there's only one more raider boss to take down before Nuka-World, so I make my way over to a metro station nearby Taffington Boathouse, where I encounter a bunch of synths. I start fighting my way through the synths, and I'm worried this is going to be another situation where the raider boss is already dead, but I press on, killing room after room of synths, which wasn't too big an issue as they do like next to no damage to me and Cait. Like, yes, they have a lot of HP, but they are not a threat to me whatsoever. Anyways, I reach the final room, which has raiders instead of synths. So I start trying to take down their leader, a man named Helter Skelter, and this fight turns into a high game stakes to peekaboo, where I show him why I'm the 6-time world champion of this sport. Anyways, with Helter Skelter dead, Sally has created one massive power vacuum in the Commonwealth, and she's going to need to get a gang of her own to take advantage of it. Also, she's progressed to the Raider tier of Raider Veteran, unlocking all melee weapons and Raider power armor, so, you know, things are good. I quickly make my way over to this scrapyard, where I activate a sentry bot and then tell it to self-destruct so I can take its fusion cores, and after that I grab a power armor frame from a nearby crashed vertibird and take it back to the Red Rocket truck stop, where I then make my way over to the USS Riptide, where I find a bunch of raiders that quickly learn Sally Two Shanks doesn't mess around with competition, as they all fall to her bullets or blade. I root the raider power... Oh, ruh-roh, Raggy, I root the raider power armor pieces off of one of the raiders. I loot the power armor raider piece. Oh my geez, I just can't get it. I loot the raider power armor pieces off of one of the raiders there, and then return to the Red Rocket truck stop, where I upgrade and repair all of the power armor pieces. I then start making my way to Vault 95, because throughout my adventures with Cait, mostly in the middle of dungeons where we're getting shot at, she always pulls me aside and tells me personal things about herself, and she's revealed that she's addicted to Psycho and doesn't want to be anymore. Now I know what you're thinking, it's not very raidery to be curing a chem addiction, but I believe raiders are all about having maximal personal freedom at the cost of other people. And the way I see it, if Cait wants the personal freedom of no longer being addicted to Psycho, I can justify it as a raider action, because I'm helping her get personal freedom at the expense of the gunners in Vault 95. So let's go ahead and do this. We start making our way down there. Also, you might be asking why we're not going to Nuka-World. I just wanted to get this out of the way first, since I think this is the first time I'm going to complete a companion quest in any of these runs, which is strange to say. While making my way to Vault 95, I run into some legendary synth who drops an irradiated automatic pipe rifle. I debated what to do with it, and my plan right now is to take the weapon mods off this one and put them on the explosive pipe rifle, as it has a bunch bunch of high-tier automatic pipe rifle mods, and I believe the explosive effect is much more useful than the irradiated effect. I've had this argument many times with people. I don't think radiation damage is all that great in Fallout because the enemies that I struggle with the most are generally immune to radiation damage. Robots, irradiated creatures, ghouls, super mutants, they're all pretty much immune to this. It's only good against humans, and I don't generally have a lot of struggle dealing with humans. I then reach Vault 95, and you know what? It's been a while since I've done a montage in one of these videos, and I know that some of you love them and others hate them, but I'm gonna do it anyways, so if you hate them, go to the times code on screen now. It's just gonna be glorious combat of me mowing down gunners. Deal with it. Alright, with Cait cured of her addiction, and with a few more prep items complete, I make the journey to the Nuka-World Transit Center in my new suit of Raider power armor. Once there, I find a ton of gunners outside, and we all know what happens to gunners when I don't even have power armor, so that was a trivial obstacle, let's be honest. I legitimately just went through them like a hot knife through butter before entering the transit center itself, where I get this guy to shut up in the most violent way possible, before powering on the monorail using a terminal nearby and riding it to Nuka-World, where a man on the PA system tells me I've been lured into this sadistic maze game show thing that involves me traversing through a ton of enemies and traps known as the Gauntlet. I quickly get to work killing off a ton of turrets while avoiding tripwires and landmines as I manage to get through the first half of the dungeon with ease, only to die to a Mirelurk. But on my second attempt, I managed to get through the entire Gauntlet without much to talk about, as nothing really threatened me enough to be actually worried. I then reach this bumper cars arena, which happens to be the final fight where I'm poised to go against the overboss of Nuka-World's Raiders, a man named Coulter. But before that happens, I want to mention that once I become overboss, I will be able to use any weapons or armor I can find in Nuka-World, because it fits the theme of this run. Also, the Thirst Zapper does not fail the run, as it doesn't deal damage. People try and bring it up as a gotcha every time I go to Nuka-World, and honestly, it seems kind of silly to waste time talking about it, but like clockwork, a bunch of people comment, and I don't understand the argument whatsoever, because it just seems like you all don't want me to take on the hardest combat DLC in the game. Like, that's the alternative here. You're just like, oh, well, your run is invalidated if you go to Nuka-World. I don't want to fail these runs. I don't care if I fail them particularly, but I don't want to, so I'll just avoid Nuka-World. So stop making arguments for things that you don't want to see. Don't you want to see me dying a whole bunch of times in the Nuka-World bottling plant, or the Galactic Zone, or anywhere, really? Like, all of this DLC is just absolute hell combat-wise. They have the strongest enemies, in my opinion. Anyways, while I've been rambling here, you watched me murder Coulter, which was laughably easy, see. And with that, Sally Two-Shank Sawyer is the new overboss of Nuka-World. She really has come quite far, but the work is only half done. She created the opportunity, but now she needs the gangs of Nuka-World to help her seize it and take over the Commonwealth. To start, she speaks with Gage, the guy who helped her beat Coulter, and he tells her that she needs to go meet Mags, Nisha, and Mason, the leaders of the 3 Nuka-World gangs. Nisha leads the sadistic disciples who love torture. Mags leads the Operators, a group of raiders focused on making caps and long-range rifles. And then there's Mason, the leader of the pack, who like to cosplay as characters from Beastars. Anyways, after meeting with all 3 of them, I speak with Gage once again, who tells me I need to clear out and take over each of the 5 parks of Nuka-World. And with that, I have a goal set before me and go ahead and spend a long while doing some prep work by trading at the market before heading off to the nearby town of Bradburton on the outskirts of the park, where I fight with a ton of ghouls, which was exciting but not all that difficult. And also I went ahead and moved all of my upgraded mods from the Raider Power Armor to the Overboss Power Armor, which does damage to any enemy nearby me, which is pretty cool. In Bradburton, I find a dead ghoul woman named Rachel who has a holotape that will be useful in the Kitty Kingdom Park, which just so happens to be the first park on my list. As I approach its irradiated entrance and start fighting through the ghouls there. The gimmick with this entire park is that there's constant radiation damage being dealt to you throughout the entire thing, but thanks to my Raider Power Armor, it's much less of a problem, so I just continue fighting through all the ghouls inside the park, and the combat itself is much easier than I expected, but unfortunately, I end up breaking the entire quest line by going to the castle first. Normally, you're supposed to go through the tunnels, and then the funhouse, and then the castle, but there's nothing stopping you from just going to the castle, and if you do go to the castle first, it completely breaks the quest. Like, it bricks it. You can't progress anymore. At this point, I was between reloading a save and redoing about 30 to 40 minutes of combat, or using console commands to fix the problem. I chose console commands because they are much easier. So with the quest fixed, I go ahead and go to confront Oswald on the top of the castle, but unfortunately it turns out that this is bugged as well, as he is in desperate need of life alert, as it seems that he's fallen down and can't get up. Now normally, I guess this wouldn't be that much of an issue. The game breaking isn't really my problem. I could just kill him, but instead, every time I bring him down to low enough HP, he just kind of teleports away and gets all of his HP back, which makes him invincible effectively. So yeah, I'm kind of just stuck in this situation where I have to reload an earlier save, and instead of fighting him, I just give him the holotape from Rachel, which completes the quest peacefully, and with that, I claim the park for the disciples and move on to the next park, which just so happens to be the easiest of all 5, Dry Rock Gulch. Honestly, I don't have much to say about this park because there's only one enemy type here that can even vaguely threaten me. It's the cave crickets, and I deal with them by just using my explosive pipe rifle to break all their legs, which makes them a lot easier to deal with. They can't run you down and deal a bunch of damage to you because their legs be broken. So yeah, other than that, I just kind of run around and complete these quests for these 3 Protectrons to get the key to Mad Mulligan's Mine, a roller coaster in the park, which just so happens to be the main dungeon, and I enter the main dungeon and kill the Bloodworm Broodmother, something like that, Bloodworm Queen. Honestly, this park is such a letdown. It is so incredibly easy to deal with bloodworms by the time you ever reach this. I mean, the only time I could see this park being difficult is if you came to Nuka-World at level 1, and at that point, you might even still be strong enough just by going through the gauntlet and completing other quests here. I naturally give the park to the disciples and move on to the Nuka-Cola bottling plant, which is the exact opposite of Dry Rock Gulch, as the main enemies here are Nuka-Lurks and Assaultrons. The Nuka-Lurks are absolutely brutal to deal with, as even in power armor they kill me so incredibly quickly I just want to fold my keyboard in half and shove it down my throat. Either way, I struggle with this dungeon for like a couple of hours. I only end up dying 5 or 6 times, but it always happens like halfway or further into the dungeon, so each attempt takes like half an hour or 15 or 20 minutes. They all take a long time, but eventually I managed to clear out the inside by being a coward and running away and using stealth criticals to deal deal with all the Nuka-Lurks, only to reach the outside, which is its own nightmare because I have to deal with a Nuka-Lurk queen, which ends with me dying on my first attempt. But on the second attempt, after a lot of time spent here, I managed to kill her by throwing an unreasonable but sufficient amount of grenades off the roof of the bottling plant down onto her. I then have to clean up the remaining Nuka-Lurks, and I do so, but it costs me all of my 38 ammo, which is really depressing because the explosive pipe rifle is kind of my crutch at this point. It's doing a lot of the heavy lifting so far. I also give this park to the Disciples as they are just my favorite Nuka-World gang, before doing a bit of trading to get more 38 ammo and taking on the next park, Safari Adventure, which is infested with the fearsome Gator Claws. I approach the front gate and find a man named Cedo who is fighting with one of the Gator Claws. After helping him kill the Gator Claw, naturally I murder him because I just don't have time for distractions. I'm here for efficiency, and wow, that is some loud thunder. I don't know if you all can hear that, but that thunder is booming. Man, we got storms going on. I really hope I don't lose power. What was I talking? Oh, right. I murdered Cedo, and then I just need to go through the park fighting with all the Gator Claws until I find out that they're being created by a cloning facility underneath the park. So I need to go get the password for this underground facility by fighting through 3 more Gator Claws, which aren't that difficult to deal with. I'm just gonna be completely honest. They share animations with Death Claws, which makes them laughably easy to kite and dodge, because once you know the attack pattern of Death Claws, you kind of can just avoid their damage almost forever. They literally have one attack you can't dodge, and it's them throwing dirt at you, and it's the only one that does like not real damage. It doesn't do much to you. All of this, and I didn't even mention that I can damn near one-shot these things with a stealth critical from Pikmin's blade. So yeah, this park is also kind of trivial like Dry Rock Gulch, but thankfully it's not boring, and I even have some tense moments, especially when I enter the underground cloning facility, as I turn off the cloning machine and then am face to face with 3 Gator Claws, and they almost trap me and kill me, but I manage to wiggle my way around them and use my various automatic weapons, including a short automatic handmade rifle from the Disciples that they gave me in one of the crates from giving them one of the parks. And with all of this, I'm able to slowly but surely whittle down these 3 Gator Claws before going through the rest of the park, where I do my first Extinction event of this run, which is interesting to say. You know, there's not a lot of times in Fallout where you actually create an Extinction event, but this is one of them. I make the Gator Claws extinct before heading over to this Ghoulrilla pen, which I thought they were just called gorillas, but in fact they're called Ghoulrillas because irradiated gorilla, which is a very fun name. Good job, Bethesda. I then claim the park for the pack, which is rather fitting, before making my way to the last of the 5 parks, which just so happens to be my favorite, the Galactic Zone. Now, throughout the other parks, I've been grabbing star cores, which are needed to complete this park if you want to complete it early, and I normally don't do this. I normally take on the Galactic Zone first, as it is my favorite park, but it definitely has the longest bit of combat if you don't do this, and I kinda did it in the last video, so I have about half of the star cores I need to complete this park, so it shouldn't be as difficult as it was the last time. Despite that though, the combat here is absolutely brutal. This park is filled with robots, which I will not even debate this with anybody anymore. Robots are the hardest enemies to fight in Fallout, almost all of them. They have great damage resistance, they generally have good weapons. Robots are kind of just the end-all be-all of enemies in Fallout. Every single time I encounter them, it's harder than any other encounter, so I struggle a lot while dealing with these robots, but also I'm incredibly powerful this run. This might be the strongest individual character I have ever made, so I do approach it with a lot more reckless abandon than I normally do in gameplay, which kind of does lead to me struggling, but it was fun. Anyways, after a long while of just constant fighting, I managed to clear the outside of the park and then enter the Interstellar Theater, and through sheer brute force and ignorance, I kill off all of the robots inside by just blowing them away with various weapons and stabbing them with Pikmin's blade, and I grab all the star cores there. Now, all I need to do is take on Nuka Galaxy, which is a roller coaster, which has the last 7 star cores I need to complete this park. I enter Nuka Galaxy and die within the first minute of entering due to this Nukatron with its Nuka launcher arms, but after that I decide to take things a little bit slower as I go through this dungeon, and I have to fight with my own ammo reserves as I'm running out of ammo for pretty much every gun, and Pikmin's blade is not all that useful here. Through playing things slow and methodical, I managed to clear out the entirety of the dungeon and then go around picking up all the star cores before heading back to the central console of the Galactic Zone and putting in all of the star cores and then deactivating the robot's defense routine, which means that all of the robots in the park are now friendly and I can claim the park for the disciples. I then speak with Gage as I have claimed all the parks, and he tells me to go speak with a man named Shank who puts together raids for the Commonwealth. He wants me to go set up some bases in the Commonwealth, and I do just that, and in order to respect both your time and mine, as it took me like 20 hours to build up a ton of bases in the Commonwealth, I'm just gonna gloss over that and say that Sally built some hella fortresses across the Commonwealth. Of course, Taffington Boathouse took the longest and had the most resources dedicated to it, but I tried to build up each of the bases because I had this idea of like doing a tour of each of them, and you know what, maybe I will post another video on another channel where I like show off them. They're not all that great, but yeah, I don't know. I wanted to do more with this, but now that I think about it, it doesn't seem all that interesting. Anyways, I spent way longer building up these to be proper raider bases, and I had a lot of fun doing it, so it was worth it. Once I get done building up all the bases, I get told by Shank to return to Nuka-World because the operators, along with Mags and the guy, there's another leader of the operators that I don't remember the name of. Either way, they've rebelled and taken over the Nuka-World power plant, and we just can't have that. So I return to the glorious Nuka-World and start fighting my way through an absolute army of operators. I start by clearing out the main section of Nuka-World because that's where my overboss power armor was, and once I get that power armor, I start making my way towards the power plant where I meet up with Mason and Nisha in order to take down Mags and all of her lackeys. So we start making our way through the power plant, and I die a few times here, and almost every death can be attributed to me getting impatient and trying to push an enemy that I just didn't have the HP to deal with at that point. The combat is really engaging, and despite the fact that I was annoyed that Nisha and Mason got stuck during the actual successful run, like they just stopped following me, so I had to clear the entire place by myself. Despite that, I had a ton of fun fighting through the operators. They have a bunch of sniper rifle handmade rifles, and they deal a lot of damage, but I also deal a ton of damage, and I had enough explosive pipe rifle ammo to really just turn them into mincemeat. It was a lot of fun fighting through all of these raiders until I reach the roof where suddenly Nisha and Mason show up again, and on my first attempt to kill Mags, I ended up dying, and then they died while I was in my death animation. It was really annoying, but on my second one, I just, you know, fell back to Old Faithful. Chems. I used a lot of chems and Pikmin's Blade to absolutely bleed them dry. With Mags and the Operator Rebellion put down, I go ahead and turn on power to Nuka-World and complete this DLC before returning to the Commonwealth, where I have one goal left. In order to establish Sally Tushank Sawyer as the undisputed leader of the Commonwealth, I need to take over the great green jewel of the Commonwealth, Diamond City. So I march down there in my power armor and start slaughtering everyone outside and inside the former baseball stadium turned shantytown. This ended up being laughably easy. The only point that was not even difficult, just annoying, was the fact that there's a ton of essential NPCs that get back up every few minutes after you knock them down. But despite that, I just do some glorious violence as I just make all of the denizens of Diamond City either turn into people who are sitting on the ground and waiting to get back up to shoot me, or corpses. It was just a lot of violence. It was really fun, and I just have to say that I really like this run. I really like the thematic approach. I like the doing things differently, but I'm not sure if it fits the channel, so seriously, give me some feedback, because I know that a lot of people are going to be like, I wish you would have just beat the game, but at the same time, I found this to be more fitting. Anyways, with Diamond City cleared, I go ahead and head outside and use a mod that allows me to build anywhere to set up a entrance that is fitting of a raider stronghold, completing the run as Sally Tushank Sawyer has conquered the Commonwealth as the ultimate raider. Thank you so much for watching, you're beautiful, and if you like this video, you'll probably like the video where I try and beat Fallout 4 survival mode as a thief. Thank you so much to the channel members and patrons, as their support is very vital to keeping this channel running. You all are oh so beautiful. Make sure to drink water and take care of yourself. This is Willow, signing off.